so excited to be here in this conversation over the next 2 days, and particularly excited to be in conversation with a Black woman who is unbought and unbossed, a Black woman who's been a trailblazer, a woman who has made history in New York, and she's gonna ping me for this, a friend and a neighbor, in air quotes. We'll get to that later.
You left Brooklyn.
It is true. You know, I'm one of those pandemic New Yorkers. I'm working my way back. But this is the 50th anniversary of Shirley Chisholm's bold run for president. And more importantly, she was a daughter of the Caribbean, but she was a Brooklyn girl.
Yes.
She announced her candidacy for president in 1972, in January, in a basement of a Brooklyn church. And she said, "I have faith in America. I believe that we are smart enough to correct our mistakes. I believe that we are intelligent enough to recognize the talent, energy, and dedication that all Americans, including women and minorities, have to offer." And that is the spirit of an Attorney General, Letitia Tish James, a daughter of Brooklyn, a woman who has spanned up and down, has crossed the Brooklyn Bridge to City Hall, who's crossed the Brooklyn Bridge to travel up to Albany, our state capital, starting her career as a staffer. And then a Brooklyn girl who is changing what justice looks like, not only for New York, but for America. So this is our Attorney General, Letitia Tish James.
Love you, love you, love you.
And so in this moment, and although I wasn't physically in Brooklyn during the pandemic, she's used every single one of her offices in a way that showed an intersection of race and gender. And so in this moment, share a little bit about your perspective about power and justice.
So before I do that, today they funeralized Madeleine Albright. And since we are in a room full of women, I think it is only proper that we pay respect to Madeleine Albright, who once said that there's a special place in hell for women who don't support other women. And we cannot let this day go by without recognizing this giant, this woman whose shoulders all of us stand on. So, because I am a woman of faith, I just ask that you would join me in just a moment of silence for someone who is going on to glory to join Shirley Chisholm and countless other heroines and sheroes who I look up to for power and for strength every day. Join me. Thank you. What was the question? So, no, listen, there's a lot of, hoopla about Tish James, and I don't take it all very serious. The reality is there's a lot of individuals with titles. There's a lot of individuals who've made history. And for me, history is nothing more than a historical footnote. The question that one must ask ourselves is, what do you do with the power that's been given to you? How do you make a difference in the life of someone else? How do you address the issue of the feminization of poverty, which is real? How do you focus on the intersection between race, gender, and poverty? And what do you do in your position, despite all the accolades, despite all the history, despite all the positions? What do you do to disrupt it? And that's what I do. As I told some young women who I met yesterday, I wake up every day, as you know, with this fire in my belly, a burning fire in my belly. And the only question I pose to myself after I ask, where's my coffee? Where can I get Starbucks? Is, who am I suing today? That's it. That's it. Because the law, I view the law both as a sword and as a shield. A law to protect the powerless against the powerful. And the law to protect those who believe that no one is listening to them, that they don't have a seat at the table. And I'm just blessed to be in this position, but I am no different from the millions and millions of girls out there in my beloved Brooklyn, in San Francisco, in communities that have been ignored, that are under-resourced, underfunded, locked out of the sunshine of opportunity. I am those girls. And I've just been lucky and blessed to be in this position. And I remember that every day. I don't forget who I come from and where I've come from. And so thank you all for being here, but I really don't want to get caught up in all of this. I miss the streets of Brooklyn. I miss talking to the senior citizens who tell me about issues that they care about. I miss talking to the young girls who tell me about all the latest fads. I miss talking to women about their problems. And I miss, most importantly, just waking up to this wonderful organization and team that I am proud to represent and saying, we got to do something about it. And that's what I do. I use my voice, I use my platform, but most importantly, I use the law.
Yeah. And she's been doing that from her role as you were a legislative director?
I was a city council member.
Well, I'm going to get to the rest
Oh,
of this
sorry.
stuff. I'm talking about when you were up in Albany as a staffer.
Yes, I was a
legislative
staff
director.
member for a very long time. I was the attorney for a number of elected officials. I worked for the New York State Assembly. I worked for a venerable state assembly member named Al Van, who coined the phrase of community empowerment. I worked for Roger Green. I worked for a number of Brooklyn progressive Democrats. I was counsel to the Committee on Children and Families, counsel to the Committee on Corporations, Authorities, and Commissions. And then I decided I wanted to run for office because I thought I could be better than a man. I knew I could.
And she was, at that time in Albany, one of the only women of color and Black women sitting in those rooms. And so that's going to lead me to my question about your approach to policy. But here is a woman, when you talk about pipeline work for women's leadership, she ran and won on the local level as a city council member, my city council member, ran and won on the citywide level of one of the country's largest city as public advocate, and then ran and won and is governing on the statewide level. And we'll talk about next steps some other time. But that being said, she has used each one of those offices in a way that, again, creates economically thriving, educated, healthy, and safe communities for all New Yorkers. And her policies have been national models. So as public advocate, right, she was able to pass, and I'll let her talk about her own record, an approach around pay equity. And then during the global pandemic was very acutely aware of how the pandemic was affecting the most vulnerable in New York.
Yeah.
And so what's your approach around creating economically thriving, educated, healthy, and safe communities, and those policies that you have over 2 decades of service been able to put into law and into policies a way of life that will transcend our lifespan, that this is legacy building for our communities?
So I ran for city council the first time and I lost. And as most of you know the story, I lost to someone who was assassinated in Manhattan, in City Hall. He was shot in the head in City Hall during a council meeting. And I lost by less than 100 votes, maybe less than 200 votes. But someone put a note under my door, and to this day, I don't know who it was. And the note said something to the effect, Tish, this notion of Chronos time, your time and Chronos time, and that this was not your time, and that God knew that you could wait, and he wanted to give James Davis his last wish on earth, and he did. I then decided to run. Well, actually, I didn't decide to run because I was in school at Columbia. And my community, Fort Greene, Clinton Hill, Prospect Heights, Crown Heights, where's Brooklyn at? Anyway, they're home of Biggie. They petitioned me to run on a third party line, the Working Families Party line. The Democratic Party they decided to support and endorse the brother of the late James Davis. My community decided to petition me to run on the Working Families Party line. We knocked on thousands and thousands of doors. We were successful. We won. So I was the first woman of color to run on a third-party line and was successful. First woman to be successful on a third-party line in New York City in over 50-some-odd years. I served for 10 years in the city council. My claim to fame is that I sued the mayor at the time for the extension of the third term. I took on a major developer over the public financing of a basketball arena because they abused eminent domain, and then a wide range of other things that I was involved in. So that was 10 years of my life, and I did a piece of legislation called the Safe Housing Act because I was concerned about the crisis of affordable housing in my neighborhood, and I wanted to create healthy homes, healthy children. We funded all of our parks, and I was particularly concerned about the environment because where children of public housing live, they had the highest asthma rates, and we lost 2 children whose pictures are still on my desk, and we decided to reform the Clean Air Act in New York City and downtown Brooklyn. And then as public advocate, passed the wage equity bill, which bans individuals, employers from asking candidates about their salary history. Because your last position should not be defined to your new position, and you should not be valued, and the salary should not be based on your last salary. And that's why so many women live in poverty, because there's no transparency and there's no accountability. And so my position is that if you want me to apply for this position, you should publicly post the salary so that all of us compete on the same level. And they're doing that more and more and more. So we passed the bill in New York City. It was banned, and then Governor Cuomo decided to do it on a statewide level. And so now in New York State, they ban salary history. They can no longer ask you, what was your previous salary? They have to post the salaries. In the public advocate's office, I passed more legislation than all 3 previous public advocates combined. Former public advocate Bill de Blasio, you may have heard of him, and others. And then I did the worst landlord list, where I shamed landlords for housing conditions in New York City, housing conditions that threaten the health and the safety of individuals. And so landlords would always call me before I published this list because I would bring all of the journalists and cameras with me and go to their properties and look at the conditions that people were living in. And they would always call me the day before and they would say, "Tish, take me off the list, please." Shaming works. When you publicly shame people, it works. And then I sued the city of New York, Mayor de Blasio, for violating the rights of disabled children. And we were successful. And we passed universal school lunch because in New York City, when I was public advocate, there were 2 lines for school lunch in New York City. 1 child for PO children and 1 child for children who can pay. And the PO children had a card, and it identified them as living below the poverty level. And these children were stigmatized. And these children were made fun of. And these children would say, "Tish," they call me Auntie Tish. "Auntie Tish, they're making fun of me." Just simply because I'm poor. So a lot of times these children didn't eat. Or they would go outside and they would get unhealthy food, mostly at restaurants, and they would eat French fries every day. And so I decided to get rid of all of that. And the only criteria should be, are you hungry? Not whether or not you're rich or poor. And so I worked with then Mayor de Blasio, with the federal government. No more cards, no more 2 lines, universal school lunch for everybody, both public and private schools in the city of New York. Now, what the kids tell me now is the food is nasty, but we're working on that too. And then Attorney General came available, and I decided to run for the office of Attorney General. as a result of a scandal. The worst secret was, at the time, I was running for mayor, but I decided against it. And what convinced me otherwise is I went to my corner coffee shop, and there was a young woman in there whose husband was about to be deported. And she cried on my shoulders. I gave her some legal advice. We protected her husband. And at that point, when I was facing that major decision, I said, Attorney General, not mayor. And the rest is history.
So don't tell me that representation matters, right? That when you have someone that has a lived experience sitting at a decision-making table, that decision-making table or that executive makes better decisions that are informed by her lived experience. And so we appreciate the innovation that you've pushed at every level that you've served. But that being said, she is a trailblazer because Black women are still severely underrepresented and underserved in our American democracy. Currently, there's 8 Black women serving on the statewide executive level. We've never elected a Black woman governor in our country's history, and we've only elected 18 Black women in our country history to statewide executive office. That leadership matters. So share a little bit about your approach. Well, let me back up and say this. I've said it publicly before. Higher Heights was founded in a Brooklyn cafe by Kimberly Peeler Allen, the other co-founder who's here, and we called a very short list of confidants and advisors, and then public advocate Tish James was one of the first phone calls we've made. Because we also know that when you have run and won on every level of government, you have a unique perspective about the opportunities and challenges that exist for women of color, and Black women. So you share a little bit about your thoughts around women's leadership, but particularly Black women's leadership in this moment, and what we need to do to ensure that we're creating pathways to seats at decision-making tables and executive tables.
Black women continue to be underestimated, but we consistently overperform over and over and over again. And although I get all this praise now, I was not supported when I ran for Attorney General. In fact, every outlet in New York City said, oh, no, not her. But nonetheless, it was progressives, it was Black women, and it was like-minded individuals who propelled me to success. I had a difficult time, as most women of color do, in raising funds, even to this day. Now, it's much easier now, since I've gone after a couple of bad men. But I cannot ignore the fact that it is very difficult for women to raise funds and to raise money. I want to thank campaign finance in New York City. I would not be in this position but for New York City campaign financing, because at the time that I ran for for city council, the match was 3-1. Now it's like 8-1 or 9-1. In New York City, in the New York City Council right now, out of 51 members, we have 38 women. Dominated by women. Campaign financing, the vision of then Speaker Melissa Mark Viverito creating an organization to promote more women. It was called 21 for 21. At the time, the year was 21. She started planning at 18. We identified candidates, we funded them, we trained them, and we propelled them into office. And now, again, you have a city council which is dominated by women and led by a woman speaker, the first African-American speaker in history in New York City. And it's difficult. I mean, I got my start by coffee clutches in public housing. Residents whose voices were ignored. Residents who wanted to talk about the conditions in public housing, who wanted to talk about environmental degradation, who wanted to talk about the lack of funding in their communities, the fact that their playgrounds didn't have grass, their playgrounds didn't have lights, their schools were underfunded. It was those women who are on public assistance, who put their few dollars together and said, we want to elect someone who understands our issues and who looks like us and who feels our pain, but more than feels our pain, understands our pain, and who can speak truth to power, and who has steel in her backbone. And their $5 added up. And as a result of their $5 and $10, which was matched by the New York City Campaign Finance, we were able to compete. And they went out there, knocked on doors, spoke to everyone, went to churches, went to synagogues, went to temples, had rallies. And so we've got to support one another, and we've got to build coalitions. And from that, I decided to build more and more coalitions. I stand before you as an African American, but back in New York City, I'm known as an honorary member of the Lubavitch community. Yes, Lubavitch. I'm in every ethnic group that you can think of. On St. Patrick's Day, I'm known as Letitia Jameson. In the Latino community, I'm known as La Luchadora. It's about joining coalitions and coming together. And there may be differences, but we've got to talk about our commonalities and what binds us. And issues related to gender equality and the feminization of poverty and childcare and healthcare and maternal mortality and healthcare disparities and inequity and industries that unfortunately ignore women, women in C-suites, women who need to be more and more in C-suites, the promotion of more women, the elevation of more women, the hiring of more women, the promotion of more women-owned businesses and minority-owned businesses. All of that is interrelated. And so it's important that you know your policy. And it's also important, everyone talks about running for office. Get over that. There are so many industries. We need women in so many other industries. I need more women behind cameras. Look at the cameras. No offense, fella. No offense. No offense. They're all guys. They're all guys. Love you. Let's applaud them because they're the guys who get it. I need more women in journalism. I need more women who are lobbyists. There's only a few. I need more women attorneys. I need more women accountants. I need more women in C-suites. I need more women with big bucks and bottom and big pockets. So when I need assistance for fundraising, they can write me a check. So it's just not running for office. I need more people to interview me. Friendly interviews. I need more people in media. I need more people on Wall Street. I need more people in finance. I need more people in tech. How many of you are in crypto?
No fucking time.
Well, maybe you got time for marijuana, baby. Cannabis is a big industry. So get fucking over it.
I was going to ask her what her advice was for her roll call, but I will take that as the advice.
I love this group.
So it's interesting. The more, this is a room full of women who lead, and we lead. My great grandmother who died, was born in 1895, died shy of her 100th birthday. She didn't believe she was a leader, right?
Yeah.
But she led, she led her community. She led her church. But oftentimes we still have that little self-doubt, right? And I know I do affirmations in the morning. But what is the voice in your head that continues to push for your leadership? We can obviously be your echo chamber, but the echo chamber that is most important is that inner voice that every morning that is encouraging you, but to be honest, can also discourage you.
So listen, they say there's men look in the mirror and they basically say, I look presidential, I can run for office, I could do it all. For women, it takes 7 individuals to persuade you to run for office, to start your own business, to follow your passion. Because if you follow your passion, my sisters, you'll never work again. Never. I love what I do. I don't consider it a job. I consider it my reason for living, my life, my raison d'etre. It's the air that I breathe. When I can improve the life of someone, when I walk out of court and I kick someone's ass, someone who is a bully, whose name I won't mention, anyway, a day, I broke, busted, and disgusted. Listen, it's magical. It's just magical. It really is. Me from Brooklyn. So, what gets me? I started out. We had a moment of silence. It's my faith. It's closing my eyes and thinking about how far I've come. It's about all of the struggles. It's about, walking the streets of Brooklyn. And even though I do have security, I usually say, go away, because I just like connecting with people and going to the supermarket and going to the laundry and seeing people who struggle every day. Women who look like all of you in this room. And the question again, as I said before, what can I do? How can I improve their life? That's what moves me. That's what gets me up every day. And knowing that I've been put in this position for a reason. And all of you in this room, we're in a difficult time in our democracy in this country. It's being threatened, my friends. And we cannot sit by and allow individuals to trample on the rights of members of the LGBTQ community, on the rights of people of color, voting rights, environmental rights, women's rights. This is our body and our choice. And all of us. And I know, in the past, the last panel talked about white women. Let's move aside the artificial constructs and come together and defend and fight for and fund our democracy and recognize what's at stake. Just recognize and understand what's at stake. Authoritarian governments oppose democratic governments. Democratic governments support and uplift democratic governments. And we have an obligation and a duty, it's part of who we are, to stand up and fight for this country. It's a real difficult time in this country. And I don't know about you, but I just won't sit idly by and allow individuals to trample on the Constitution and to trample on the rights of others. So are you with me? Yes. Are you with me? Are you with me? Are you with me? Yeah. We can do it. We can do it. Women, ladies, we represent the political muscle of this nation. And if we come together, there's nothing that we can't do. And that means saving our democracy. And so let's send the message out there today. Let's tell all of our sister girlfriends that we've got work to do. And it has to begin now. Power, justice, women. Let's go.